This episode is a break from the usual feed. We will be doing a review of Star Wars in concert at the LA Phil on November 21st, 2024. Hello there, and welcome to Star Wars Music Minute, where we celebrate the music and sound of Star Wars. I'm Chrisanthe Tan, you can call me Xanthe, and today I have James Waterman, Christina Ward, and Ender Smith with me to review Star Wars in Concert. Star Wars in Concert was a worldwide concert series that toured from 2009 to 2011 and featured edited footage from the first 6 Star Wars films set to live music. Anthony Daniels hosted these concerts, narrating audiences through the journey of Star Wars, and it was extremely awesome. I went to this show in 2010, actually, and I was really sad when they stopped doing it. But lo and behold, Walt Disney Concert Hall came back with another Star Wars in Concert last night. It's actually going on this whole weekend, November 21st through whatever 4 days later is. Anthony Daniels hosted once again while the LA Phil played under the baton of Sarah Hicks, and the show was altered and expanded to incorporate the sequel trilogy. As of now, this revival of Star Wars in Concert seems to be a one-off event for the LA Phil. There aren't any publicly confirmed plans to tour this show, but I'm hoping that they do. And the 4 of us, Christina Ward, Ender Smith, James Waterman, and I got to attend the show last night, so we wanted to give a little review of it. We have mostly withheld opinions from each other, so we could wait to record this today. Hi.
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 Hi again.
Last night was so fun. I know it feels.
Yes.
I thought we could maybe start out by talking about some highlights from the show. Anyone can go first.
Seeing Anthony Daniels and his excellent narration of the event.
Yeah, Anthony Daniels is such a pro. Pretty amazing and noticeably off book the whole time.
Yep.
Wasn't reading off of any type of script or any type of written prompt or anything like that. And actually, the one time that he seemed to make a verbal flub, he immediately ad-libbed a Jedi mind trick on the entire audience and said, "You did not hear me make a mistake. Repeat after me." And everybody played along, and it was a nice reminder of just how much of a just seasoned professional Anthony Daniels is as both like a speaker and an actor. It was pretty fun.
And he was really good at being a storyteller, which is a lot of what the narration is like really storytellery storytelling.
Right.
Yeah.
And we'll get to this later, but I think to add to what Ender just said, having that particular actor who means so much to all generations of Star Wars fans, I think probably did a lot of heavy lifting to bring in some of the newer content that like you mentioned, was not present in the first rendition of this particular show, that maybe some of the either older fans or just like fans that might have been there. I mean, this is a pretty like public facing, I mean, of course Star Wars is public facing, but I should say like, what's the word for it? More like casual fan facing event, right? But there was a lot of like sequel stuff in there that maybe some folks might have even skipped or just not been a big fan of, and having Anthony Daniels there to like be the through line throughout, because there's some heavy on the second half, lots of sequel music and clips. So
Yeah, they mainly went from like episode order. So they started with like episode 1, the prequels, and then they went to the originals, and then they went to the sequels, which I think lent itself to the overall like narrative of the journey of Star Wars. I mean, it reminds me of the scene in Return of the Jedi when C-3PO is sitting around the campfire. They're all like the Ewoks, and he's telling the story, everything that they've been through. Yeah, I would say he was also the highlight for me. Also, it's just so, I know it's kind of a cheap shot maybe, and he does it every show. And he did this the first time I saw him in concert in 2010. He'll throw in the C-3PO gags. He'll like repeat some of, the lines, like he said the asteroid field, the odds stuff. But it was a hit. I enjoyed it. Yeah, and it's also remarkable how good his voice still is.
Yes. He seamlessly went from talking about C3PO to doing the C3PO cut to almost like laughing about how C3PO was, um, how people were like getting onto him about. He's like, I know no one wants to hear the odds, or like he was successfully navigating the fourth wall and playing a character at the same time. Very impressive.
Yeah. And that was a fun little like conductor gag that they had as well, where the conductor turns around when Anthony Daniels is talking about like how cool and elegant and intelligent of a droid C3PO is. She's like, wrap it up, wrap it up.
Yeah, that was great.
Cute.
I would say another highlight for me was our seats, actually. We were sitting in the Orchestra East section, and which, like, looking at the stage, if you're sitting in the audience looking at the stage, we're like way off to the left, almost like we're in the back of the first violins. And you get a really good view of the orchestra, and it was really fun to be able to see what instruments were being played, what like interesting doublings were happening. I really liked getting to see that.
Yeah, it was
I liked
definitely
being able
nice.
to see being able to see the conductor, the screen that Hicks was using to make cues. It was fun to watch that process, and to, I don't know, it was almost like getting a glimpse into the production side of things that you otherwise might not get. And it was still felt like movie magic, though, a little bit.
To have everything like coalesce.
Yeah. Yeah, it was nice.
Yeah, it's it goes without saying, I mean, we're all professional musicians here, and we know what this process is like. But it's undeniable how impressive of a feat it is to have, that many musicians all on one stage, all following along, with a conductor that has a click track and is following a prompter, and it all clicking and gelling wonderfully together, and nobody falls behind, and the group is just such pros that they're able to just not just play their part beautifully, but stay with one another. I mean, we take these things for granted within an orchestral playing, but it is, it's just nice to see the best of the best, doing what they do, playing, kind of jumping out of the screen in many ways. Like, I've seen Star Wars in concert before, like the Hollywood Bowl before, and obviously I've heard, some of these arrangements in various, like, either like university orchestras or professional orchestras, etc. But there's just something special about hearing it so well performed, and in such a great space where everything is crystal clear. And you've talked a lot on this podcast, Xanthe, about how, like, the mix that you hear in a movie is not the mix that you would hear on a soundtrack. So there's even moments of some of my favorite scores where I just heard so crystal clear, and in ways that things jumped out at me that I haven't heard before, that it was just so nice to, like, both, like, look over them with our great seats and also just hear them in that space so front and center and audible.
I think this would be a good time to maybe like transition the conversation into the venue and the technical aspects and just like how everything came together and how everything sounded. I will note that, like, one of the first things I noticed was, in addition to Sarah Hicks having her screen, with the punches and streamers that tell you, like, James, when you and I went to the concert last month, from Mexico to Hollywood, we saw Gustavo Dudamel also conducting with that in front of him, because there was picture involved. But in addition, the players did have single, like, earbuds or over ear. They had like headphones, basically one ear. So that leads me to believe that they also had a click, or at least had either, I don't know if it was continuous click or if it was just click to get ready to start each piece, or just click in certain places, or just, I don't know, audio instructions. But it did sound a little bit clicky to me in places. But
Yeah, just like kind of the tempo was locked in. Yeah.
Yeah, there were a few
in
places where the
parts.
tempo felt super locked in, and a few places where I felt like, I guess this is kind of talking about performance too, but I think the technical aspect of it also just plays a big role, because then the encores, they didn't use click, and it was like a clear difference there. Yeah,
There's
there
a
were
night
just
and day difference.
yeah, there were a couple parts where I felt like the orchestra was maybe slightly falling apart or slightly falling behind, and then they had to like hit a hit point. But I don't know if it was just where we were in the hall, hearing certain sounds travel faster, or I don't really know.
So I did write down a specific point when I thought that they might be having trouble staying together, or maybe the tempo was too fast for what needs to be played. So I definitely picked up on that from time to time.
Yeah, do you have an example?
Yeah, it was on the I don't know what to call the section, the minor development type section of Across the Stars.
Yep, that's one
Like
where yep, that's what I wrote down too.
kind of the war section.
Yeah, like the lurking
that.
danger motif. That thing?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah. There was definitely some, like, I don't know if it was quite together.
Yeah. I will say overall those moments were fewer than like the moments where it was like stunning.
Yes.
So like it was mostly wonderful. Yeah, there were just a few parts where I was like, oh, interesting tempo being taken, where I felt like maybe the accelerando had to happen too quickly to match the visuals,
Yeah.
or a few things where it seemed tricky.
Yeah, and I'm very curious, Xanthe, if you have any insight on this, on how like the original pictures were scored in terms of locking things to picture. I don't, I admittedly don't know, I'm pretty in the dark on that process, in terms of like those full scores back in the 70s. Did they have to do a lot of visual locking in, or were there mechanisms for metronomes and things like that, that they had access to make things a little bit more exact? Do you happen to know how they technically would make those things work?
It was just visually.
I think that's what I imagined,
Yeah.
right? John Williams like literally watching the picture and being like,
Yep.
and just doing a bunch of takes, like let's draw that out maybe a little longer. And it was fun to watch and kind of imagine that we were watching a scoring session. That's where my imagination was in some ways. Even though I know everything was already locked to picture, it kind of felt, I was like imagining them, okay, let's take that again, but let's make it a little longer so it really lands when this happens. And it's kind of magical when you get to see that happen, honestly. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting how attached we get to the particular recording that we've heard,
Yeah.
where I think all of us probably at one time or other during the concert felt, oh, is this supposed to be faster? Or I don't remember this particular single bar that got cut from
Yeah.
right.
from the movie version,
I
and how that.
myself think that oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh well.
I was just adding that I definitely think of almost all music as like I don't know, like a contiguous substance like butter or something like that, where it's like it's going to be a little different every time. So I just wanted to throw in that I really appreciate those moments when it's different, and
Yeah.
even if I maybe don't like a change sometimes, but I love hearing, wow, that they did that piece really slow. Wow, they did that piece really fast. Ooh, they removed those bits so that they could line it up with some other thing. I think that's really interesting, and very standard I think for performances that conductors or orchestras will make little updates. Like the LA Phil has an in-house librarian and in his library that is probably producing like a unique score. Sometimes for everything. It's very cool.
And in addition to that, I would say like and this is, coming completely from my own, area of study and preference, I'm going to say something, somewhat offensive to the violinists on the stream, which is like, for the most part, when you hear an orchestra from the recording, like the violins sound like, pretty similar to the violins, just by pure nature of them just both being violins and made out of the same thing. You know what I mean? And yeah, like the reverb of the hall is different, the way they perform it, et cetera, whatever. But where I'm going with this is like the choice of like percussion instruments, just the sheer timbre of like, I'm using this tambourine, where on the original recording they may have used a completely. Tambourines can vary so wildly, or a crash cymbal, like a sound of a crash cymbal can just really. That's why you see all these like producers that make like electronic beats these days just menu diving for the perfect snare sound. You know what I mean? And like I said, I mean, of course, there's a variety of different string instruments, but what sticks out to me is just like, that's not the crash cymbal from the recording. That's not the tambourine that I remember being in that section. The snare drum sounds deeper than the recording. It doesn't sound bad. It sounds wonderful. But like, even just the percussionist's choice of instrument to bring to the concert, even in that day, like of the day that they scored it back in 1776 or whenever they would have done it, just that whatever snare drum that the percussionist brought into the session that day is like the one that's cemented into the recording, you know what I mean? And so yeah, as a percussionist, I was just enjoying hearing hearing my favorite music being played, but like it's sounding different because it's just not the same instruments, pure and simple.
Okay, James, I have something to add to that, which is I don't think it's necessarily. I think it's the difference between a section sound and a solo sound, because I think with violins, also different violins do sound radically different. Of
course they do.
But the thing is, violins in an orchestra aren't normally soloing. They're a section.
Right.
And they're meant to be a section.
There you go.
Because
so one violin might sound different than a violin.
Right, but a section sound will
going to sound about like 30 violins. Right.
Yeah,
I mean, they all just sound like violins to me. I don't care. I can't tell the difference at all. No,
violin, viola, that cello thing.
I had on the podcast I had Trevor Mowry, who is oboist in I don't know, I can't remember, a couple symphonies, and he was talking about how on the recordings it's so interesting hearing the oboists. There's playing with a very European style reed, like how what we probably heard last night was oboist playing on more like American style reed, and he thinks like he's like the London Symphony oboist on the original Star Wars recordings sounds like plays with the hallmarks that you'd expect from a British oboe player at that time. So I think, there are just
very interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that kind of thing sticks out to me. It's just hearing it being played by a different band. I mean, really, that's what it boils down to, right? Like,
yeah.
Something that stood out to me was also just how much mixing goes on before you hear it on the soundtrack or album version of these pieces versus how it actually sounds in the hall. I felt like the percussion was a lot more forward in the actual space with it. Mm-hmm. And so I found myself writing down things about like, oh, I didn't know there were tubular bells and hand percussion and,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like when they used the triangle, it like the way it resonated and literally, percussed obviously throughout the space, it was very exciting. It was exciting in a way that it isn't always exciting in a soundtrack, because it's like, oh, look at that really loud, intense sound all of a sudden coming from that specific point in a room. It's very nice. It was magical.
Speaking of like the sound levels, what did you all think of the the scenes that they're playing, sometimes it was like scenes with the dialogue. Sometimes it was like just random voiceovers that would come up. What did you think of the inclusion of that element and how it sounded in the mixture with the live music?
That was nice. Yeah. I thought they also had subtitles to help you with that mix. I in fact I probably wanted more sound from the clips.
Did you want more dialogue or more sound effects?
More, I think both. Yeah. I got to be honest with you. I almost would like more just like let's and they kind of did this, I think, towards the end with some of the Rise of Skywalker clips. I kind of wanted just more scene. Like let's just hear the scene. Like let's just watch the scene. Let's what I kind of was just like I kind of just want to watch Star Wars right now. Like
yes.
Go
ahead.
One of my best concert going experiences was seeing Empire Strikes Back live to picture. With the Seattle Symphony.
That's fun.
And they also run the subtitles the whole time because the orchestra is not mixed down so it's sometimes just too loud to hear the dialogue. But that was that's a whole experience to itself.
That's right. Yeah. So I think there was moments when I was like, oh man, I kind of just that clip. I want to watch that whole scene of Rey and Luke and Last Jedi. Can we just watch that right now? Do we have to do this montage thing right now? I kind of just want to watch The Last Jedi right now.
I actually wrote down that I did not like the voiceovers,
really?
And I did that funny. by the third piece, I think.
Why not?
I found it. One part was the mix. There were times that it was very loud relative to the music. It worked better when the orchestra was loud at the time that the dialogue is playing.
Right.
But like I wrote down that nothing has ever been louder than Anakin screaming Padme.
Right.
Which,
what did you think of all of that, Christina?
It was a lot of different things, I guess. But I think that it has to do with what I was focusing on. And I think that we all choose to focus on different things. And so that's relevant. Like, of course, we'll all have different perspectives of it. But even though the visuals were very interesting, I was usually more excited about watching the orchestra. And so the inclusion of dialogue allowed me to still follow what was going on the screen without actually looking at the screen, which I thought was helpful for me to be able to kind of do my own thing and not watch isn't my own thing, just to look at what I want to look at and still be able to follow the drama. And I appreciated that. I also definitely got the feeling that they, purposely mixed and lined up some cues so that, the orchestra does something and then it's like, Padme! There were definitely a lot of sculpted cries. There was one moment I was trying to look for it in my notes, and it might have been in the Scum and where I think I wrote it down was maybe in the Scum and Villainy. I'm not really sure, but I enjoyed when I feel like Hicks was purposely trying to keep the orchestra very quiet, even though something exciting was going on the screen, so that then the orchestra could come in and comment on the exciting thing on the screen. And it seemed like sometimes she was playing with that, almost like, oh, we all feel rising energy, but the orchestra is going to stay down here. And I feel like she did a good job sculpting that for us. So I guess that's not directly read as a dialogue, but yeah, I liked it.
I also liked the inclusion of the voiceover. I think especially since, I guess this is kind of talking about the structure of the thing, which was quite different from Act 1 to Act 2. I think having the little voiceover, the little stuff helped me buy into the theme that was trying to be, that was proposed for each piece.
I was just thinking a very similar thing to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me actually put the concert program up on screen. It's kind of hard to see, but you see they don't put like asteroid field, like I don't know, fanfare or anything. Like they don't put names of the cues or the soundtrack pieces. They had sort of like names that were kind of about the theme that they were trying to portray. So like opening had the THX logo and it had the main fanfare. Dark Forces Conspire had Duel of the Fates. An Unlikely Alliance, which was like number 8, had both like the Binary Sunset. I don't remember what the actual cue name is. And Cantina Band. So some of them were like multiple, but yeah, don't pay attention to my notes on the right. That they were guesses, and I wasn't right about all of them. So
pretty close then.
Yeah, but yeah. So those were the themes that we were meant to be thinking about, and that's like what Anthony Daniels would prepare us for before starting the next one.
Which I think this is, and I guess this kind of goes back to the point that I was talking about earlier with like having Anthony Daniels there to help, bring the through line. It's like this is an event that is entitled for a very diverse audience, I think, of both like super fans, casual fans, people that just love the LA Phil, people that are just like movie soundtrack fans, musicians, etc. And I think the dialogue, like if they just did Star Wars live in concert and they had no screen up there and we just sat there and we just listened to John Williams's music, like maybe the four of us and folks like the four of us might be like, that might be enough for us all night, right? It's just like, oh, great, I get to hear these beautiful pieces of music, right? But, adding the element of the visual component, I think helps folks draw those connections even like infinitely stronger. And then the inclusion of the dialogue, like you said, Xanthe, I think starts to paint a picture for folks that really just really helps solidify like, hey, this is what you're maybe supposed to be like thinking about with this inclusion in this montage, right? Yeah. And the whole time I was watching it, has anyone seen this video online of Black Sabbath's War Pigs over a montage of like Star Wars villain clips from the movies, and it is so awesome, and it's like it reminded me of the types of montages that they did in this concert, which it's like a super cut throughout the entire saga showing like the evils of these, of the Imperial and Anakin and Vader and all and the Emperor and everybody, but it's over like Ozzy Osbourne's like war pigs, like generals gathered in their masses. Yeah, it's so good, and it'll get you pumped up to watch Star Wars, and that's kind of how I felt in a number of these spots where you're just like, wow, look at how they tied all these different clips from throughout the saga into this kind of one thematic core of what we're talking about here, So even though it was kind of told in that narrative structure, I think they did a good job of also like tying the through lines and themes, and I think the dialogue was a big part of that too. So.
If you send me a link to that, I'll put that in the show notes for people. To watch that.
Yeah, the montages of these definitely reminded me of that. So.
Yeah, the program says that it was written by Jamie Richardson and that the film montages were produced by Kevin Kurtz, Jamie Richardson, and Laura Gibson. And so I think that's an interesting. I just think it's nice to give them a shout out for curating all of that for us, and it provided so much. It provided a lot of context, even as a person who I feel like sort of in tune with the overall scope of the Star Wars stories over the course of the 9 films. I still feel like I gained a lot of context from this that I either didn't have before or I couldn't see before, because it's really hard to perceive all 9 films or all 6 films, even from when you saw it before, it,
Hmm.
it in something that's conceivable as one unit. It was very helpful. I also felt like they did a great job bringing up. It was just interesting which quotes from the movie were prevalent at certain times. I felt like sometimes there were quotes that were really relevant to the current world, or sometimes there were quotes that, yeah, yeah, I think there was also a bit of a, I guess that's a fourth wall kind of a break, where it makes me think, oh, that's a little bit relevant to right now. Yeah, I liked that.
What were you going to say, Ender?
Oh, I didn't say anything.
Okay. Um, I think so. This, I wonder the team that I just put on screen, the team of people that worked on this. I'm really curious if how much of the team from 2010 or 2009, when this concert first, when this was made, all this was made. It was actually made for a Revenge of the Sith, I believe, DVD extra, and then it became a concert. I wonder how much of the same team worked on it, because I do feel like the sequel stuff that was added felt very different. Felt quite different from the other stuff, 1 through 6. Like I feel I got the sense that they didn't re-edit the episode 1 through 6 stuff. A lot of it looked very 2000s era, like. And James, you were saying you were like, that looks so 2000 something, like the font and the everything.
The font of the titles of the bits reminded me of like kind of like something you'd see on like a Lord of the Rings DVD or something like that. Extended features. Like
for me, it was like the blurry sepia filters.
Hold on. Yeah, the blurry sepia filter was interesting. The font is Albertus.
Oh, that's right. We have a font expert here. Perfect. Let's go.
And it was used it was used in the marketing for episode 1 through 3.
That's
right.
And
so like every saga has a beginning. I'm pretty sure is Albertus. And
that is wild.
And the subtitle of like the actual title of each of the prequel films, like it has Star Wars episode blah, that's in Trajan, and then across the bottom the Phantom Menace or Attack of the Clones, that's in Albertus. So that's something.
For the sequel trilogy titles,
so
did they
yes,
use that too?
it is very 2000s.
Did they
Did
keep
they use
font
that? Yeah.
for the sequel trilogy?
No, the sequel trilogy uses.
Oh, sorry, I mean in the concert.
Like last
in
night.
the concert? Yes. They had consistent titles throughout the show, which I think means that somebody probably had to redo the old ones in order to get them to match as cleanly as they did, because all of the effects and everything were identical, but they were clearly recreating something from the 2000s for sure.
That's awesome. That is awesome. I guess I have to say, before like this event came out, I guess I wasn't aware that this was something that was so rare to come through. I guess if you would have asked me, hey, do you think the LA Phil like plays a Star Wars in concert? I'd say yeah, they probably do that like every other year. I mean, I know that they do like the kind of
Bowl.
events like what Ender said, like at the bowl. But I just would have assumed that would have been regular programming, this type of event, because it seems like such a popular and in demand type of thing. Like maybe they do well and they bring it back on a regular basis because it's pretty awesome.
I've been to the Hollywood Bowl, John Williams show twice, and they play, a good amount of Star Wars music, but really not a big selection. It's going to be like your Imperial March, your Princess Leia, your Yoda, Scherzo for X-Wing. Like, it's going to be good stuff, but very little from the sequel trilogy very little from the prequel trilogy. And it's basically it was the same stuff both years I went. So to get to hear just the droids, like it was March of the Resistance, like Anthem of Evil was definitely a unique, even like Asteroid Field. I've never heard that in concert. They don't play that at the bowl. Yeah, that
cool.
was
and
definitely...
Rose's theme.
Yeah, Rose's theme.
Right?
Okay, we're gonna talk about that one.
Yeah, we will. But like, when do you get to hear that live in concert? You know what I mean?
Never thought
like,
I
what?
would. Yeah,
it's pretty wild. Yeah, I have to say, just on a cultural level, like, just a meta contextual programmatic kind of critique or commentary. I mean, this music is really the orchestral music of today. This is the analog of the to popular opera music of the 1800s, and like this is they should program this stuff more often, like at major orchestras, because this is how people take in orchestra music very commonly these days, is through their movies, right? And it's new music. I mean, that's the other thing. Like, this music is new and fresh, and it's only 50 years old or so at the oldest. And yeah, I mean, come on. I feel like they should program these types of concerts, and I guess they are. I mean, LA Phil has been doing that. This as we, the three of us have been at multiple concerts where they're kind of doing these types of things. But I don't know. I think there is sometimes a view of these types of concerts like they're lowbrow or something like that. And I don't think so. I think this music is deserves to be treated as much of a staple of the orchestral experience, concert going experience, as any of the classic classical pieces that they bring on a regular basis. So,
way to just bring a very big topic into this, which I'm gonna withhold most of my thoughts from at this moment.
Sure.
Christina has 2 thumbs up. Christina, what do you have to say?
I really appreciate what James just said. I like it.
It's fine.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
I think that John Williams is one of the top. So I was recently talking to someone about the top most influential composers of the last kind of century and who they are. And the particular person I was talking to specifically mentioned John Williams for Star Wars and how prevalent that is, and then Koji Kondo of Nintendo.
Interesting.
And I thought that was interesting because I thought, oh yeah, that actually is really prevalent throughout all sorts of different veins of society. And in terms of, I just think it's a really interesting topic. That's a good point, that it's a huge topic. But I see that, like, back in the day, we would have been listening to lowbrow music. Oh, just that Haydn guy who the king hired to play for our birthday party. Like, or maybe I'm just saying Handel. But that guy whose name starts with H. Who cares? Like, it's not, I guess what I'm saying is, things used to be very casual about classical music in a way that, because they're historical and big now, or historical and big, I guess, we respect them a lot, but I don't even think they always garnered that level of academic respect at the time that a lot of music was produced by the people. I don't know. I'm not convinced about what I just said, but
no, I mean, there's something,
I like some of it.
There's definitely something to it. Ender and I are reading The Rest is Noise by Alex Ross. It's my second read, but I forgot so much from my first read. It's worth rereading for sure. Where they talk about like how in the concert halls, up until like, I don't know, these aren't exact dates, 1850s, there was a higher percentage of new music in the concert hall than older music. And then by late 1800s, it dwindled to like a lower percentage. And then, turn of the century, it dwindled to like 20% new music, mostly old music. And this kind of coincided with like the people who would have gone to the concert hall to hear new music would now be going after like more popular forms of music. And so kind of the audience, anyway. But to what Christina said about influential composers of the 20th century, I want to shout out Robert Matsuda, who has this podcast called Mind Over Music. And Robert is a violinist, and we were stand partners in a concert several weeks ago. And there's an episode that they have called The Fourth Seat, and where they kind of pulled a bunch of people, like, who are the most influential composers. And basically the three that everyone could agree on were Bach, Mozart, Beethoven. And so this episode is about, like, who would be the fourth one. And yeah, the last time I saw Robert, we were just beginning to talk about, like, what if it's John Williams, for having, like, such a big impact, having all the earworms, like a body of work, just changing the landscape of 20th century music.
I think so. I think there's a lot of people that don't want to admit that John Williams is that impactful. You know, I think there's a lot of people that eventually, I think history will cement John Williams, you know, as like one of the most important musical figures of probably the 20th century, in my opinion. But
well, let's talk about the framing of this concert, because this felt more like an LA Phil concert than it did a big fan event. When I went to this in 2010, it was a massive, like, fan expo. I'm going to put some pictures on screen. Okay. There were, like, people in costume.
This is you at that event?
Yes.
That is wild.
That is 14 years ago. This is my brother.
Awesome.
There was, like, lots of stuff. There was, like, lots of fan stuff. And that's where I got the shirt that I'm wearing, which is Boba
These
Fett.
are all from Xanthe's MySpace.
But now when people see this shirt, they're like, oh, you have a Mandalorian shirt.
Oh, I didn't realize you got that. Wow.
I got it at Star Wars in Concert.
You're such an OG. That's awesome.
And there was a laser show in it. Like,
what?
And it was an arena tour. So it was in a much bigger venue, and it had much more like light stuff. And it was like, it was more like a pop concert, basically. It was an arena. And so having this concert it was scaled down significantly for Disney Concert Hall, which doesn't mean it was worse. Disney Concert Hall is an amazing venue. I really love going to concerts at Disney Hall. Acoustics are great. Like, we didn't need a whole light show. It was more intimate. So, you know, when you have an arena, that's way, way, way more people. So you kind of have to make everything bigger. This was much smaller. And they didn't, like, turn the Disney Hall into, like, they didn't put, like, booths for merch, and, like, they didn't have, like rebel costumes and stuff like that.
Well, that was an interesting thing to point out. Like, once the lights were under, remember we looked around, there was literally 3 pockets of fans with lightsabers.
Yeah.
And they were only, like, 2 of them at a time. There was, like, one over there, and one over there. And there was only, like, there wasn't, like, the whole, like, it wasn't like a nerd fest, you know?
I think people were confused. Like, I think people just weren't sure. Because I also was like, when I saw other people with lightsabers, I was like, oh, should I have brought a lightsaber that I bring to the Hollywood Bowl? And then I was like, well, I didn't, because I wasn't really sure about, well, we're going to Disney Concert Hall, so I don't know if that's appropriate for there. I think a lot of people were probably confused, and they didn't really provide, like, feel free to dress up or anything like that. So so it didn't really happen too much, which is fine, but
yeah, and I think it's really funny that I feel like a lot of these, like what we're talking about right now, kind of connects to that whole cultural discussion about, like, this experience taking this music both, like, seriously, but also, like, embracing that, like, movies are, like, the new media in which these important pieces of quote unquote classical music are tethered to them, and those movies have wide appeal to, like, outside of, like, the concert going culture. And so that there's, like, a confusion of culture clash there, which is kind of really interesting in many ways. Yeah, like you and I were joking, and actually I led Xanthe astray to a certain extent over text, where I was like, I'm gonna wear a Star Wars t-shirt, I'm gonna wear a black suit coat on top of it,
and that's what I wore.
And that's what Xanthe ended up wearing.
I don't think you led me astray. You were just giving. I saw it as just.
I was giving you fire fashion advice, is what I was
and I
doing.
took it, and it went well.
Yeah. And you looked fantastic.
Thank you. So the other framing bit that I want to bring up is, well, let's rewind to February of this year when Christina and I went to a concert at Walt Disney Concert Hall. I requested to cover it because I write for the San Francisco Classical Voice, and I put in a request to cover this concert because it was called A Century of Film Music, John Williams Spotlight. And I believed, based on the marketing for it, the title of it, everything, I believed that it would be a lot more John Williamsy than it was. It was not very John Williamsy at all. Apparently, he curated the pieces, though.
I see.
We'll get back to we'll touch on that point in a second with the concert James and I went to. But yeah, Christina, given that this is apparently in the same series, it said John Williams Spotlight. This obviously felt like, no, of course this makes sense to be part of the LA Phil's John Williams Spotlight year or whatever they're doing. But that first concert we went to, like, didn't
It was it was a historical picture of film music and the film music industry through a particular lens. The one we went to really felt like it was a lens about the Newman family and the Newman music dynasty. That's a lot of what I got from that.
which I don't think
But
was
I
intentional.
Yeah, I don't know if that was John's intention. But I did appreciate that they both started the same way with the
Oh, did they have the THX thing at that concert too?
Was it not the THX theme, or did they have the
No,
the 20th Century Fox
They played the
Spotlight
Fox.
theme
They
that
played
was
the Fox
composed by
fanfare.
the Fox fanfare? Okay. I did appreciate that though. I like that they both start with the movie fanfare thing. I think that's kind of cool. And
So it was just
Last night
all
we didn't-
Randy. It was all Randy Newman scores or songs.
Here,
the whole time?
this was the program.
no,
Wait, just really quick, a fact check. Did they play the 20th Century Fox fanfare last night? I don't remember them doing
No.
that.
They did not.
They did not. Okay, they did in
No.
2010. They did before Disney acquired Lucasfilm. So I think that is interesting.
But the funny thing is that Disney also acquired Fox, so they could throw it back in there if they wanted. But,
yeah. So anyway,
interesting.
this
Where's
was
You Got a Friend in Me? Sorry,
yeah,
that's
it
not
was
funny
like
jokes.
Korn Gold, Rosha, Waxman, and my takeaway from this concert, they had one thing by John Williams on the program, no, two things, and I think by far my favorite thing on the program was John Williams' excerpts from Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and it made me feel like, wow, I want more John Williams in the concert hall. Like, if you're going to do LA Phil, if you're going to do a John Williams Spotlight series, please, can you make... I also appreciate the idea of John Williams as a curatorial voice, except I would have liked then some like program notes that are like why he picked the pieces, if you're going to do that, which they didn't have. And then James and I went to another John Williams Spotlight concert that was from Mexico to Hollywood. It was scores from Mexican cinema and Hollywood cinema in the golden age, and fantastic concert, really, really fun, really awesome. But again, I was like, I don't know if John Williams picked this one or like what hand John Williams had in this. So I'm glad that they have something, like the concert we went to last night that was genuinely more of a John Williams spotlight. But I would love to just hear like an all John Williams concert, Close Encounters, like just some deeper cuts.
Give me the hits, Give me the...
Or
Give me the
not
good
hits.
stuff.
Give me not hits.
Right, sure, yeah. Give me
give me some Williams.
Yeah.
For sure.
Like,
yeah, and I also
Williams.
I think what for our show, Robert Rodriguez was kind of the connecting voice for that. But it was almost like, did Robert Rodriguez curate this concert? like it seemed like he had
He had a personal connection to a lot of the films.
Yeah. It almost felt like he had more to say than I could tell. Well, there just wasn't John Williams's voice present in the presentation for us to understand how this was curated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
As opposed to, another LA Phil event that just happened this weekend that was curated by, Ellen Reed.
Right. The composer.
I mean, that particular show, I mean, not only did she present her own work, but I mean, there was just so much documentation about her process with that particular event, noon to midnight, and how each selection was presented and prepared, and how it connected to the field recordings idea. And she just had a voice that was very present in that particular presentation. So when you say like this has been curated by Ellen Reed, it was very clear what the voice was there, as opposed to some of these curated concerts. You're like,
Ender, I believe you were starting to say something.
Oh, well, I don't know if this is a good segue point, and I don't know if there was a better one earlier. But I kind of also want to talk about like two elements of the programming of this concert specifically, which is like the kind of three different approaches thing where the first six movies felt one way, and then 7 and 8 felt another way, and then 9 had some other choices made. Like there were clearly different types of choices made across the saga. And then also I wanted to ask about like what people feel about the specific concert arrangements.
Yeah.
And if anybody had any thoughts about like, because a lot of film music does not have endings per se.
Right.
Often you go to the next scene. So there's no button on the end of a lot of pieces. And like Asteroid Field had a very clear button on the end of it that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, no, I think this is a fine time to segue into the different approaches. And then also I'll add just the music selections. And then also like how the endings were, the arrangements, and the flow of it. So do you want to recap, Ender, like what you saw as the three approaches?
Yeah. So the original 6 films were clearly done in 2009 with some edits to, like they took out the throne room. I think it was the one thing that I saw definitely changed from.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe we should do a side-by-side comparison? Probably. This was this was the set back in the day.
I got to be honest with you, like as somebody that actually didn't know the history and didn't have that context, that division was not apparent to me between like what was still there from 2009 and what was. I didn't know that this event had only happened since 2009 going into this concert. You know what I mean? Like I think that it's possible that the knowledge of that context might have influenced how you heard the music or not, or
well,
not.
No, Ender only found that out. Ender only found that out like 2 hours ago when
oh,
saw
okay,
me
interesting.
Looking at it. Yeah.
But interesting. Okay, so
and I didn't remember, and I didn't personally remember.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, well, I did not know that there was like a different timeline for like when they compiled these arrangements or anything like that. It all felt like one particular approach for everything in my mind. But
interesting.
Yeah.
So it looks like they also took out the flag parade, but I think everything else.
Let's see.
Is consistent.
The opening, Dark Force, which was, except they took out the Fox fanfare. Main title, Blockade Runner, Duel of the Fates was Dark Forces Conspire, Hero Rises, Droids, A Race with Destiny. We didn't get that. The flag parade, right. Forbidden Love, we got. It was called something different.
But with a different title?
A Fateful Love is what it was called. in the concert last night. A Hero Falls.
Oh, interesting.
We got that. An Empire is Forged. We got that. A Narrow Escape is the Asteroid Field. Yep. A Defender Emerges. Leia's Theme. An Unlikely Alliance. Oh, they added a Bond Unbroken earlier.
Okay.
Or they took out An Unlikely Alliance? They took out An Unlikely Alliance. Oh, no.
No. An Unlikely Alliance, they just retitled.
A Jedi is...
No, that would be whatever was after Imperial March.
Okay.
An Empire is Forged.
Oh, no, they did have An
number 8.
Unlikely Alliance. Yeah, no, they did.
Yeah, they moved that.
A Strike for Freedom was TIE Fighter Attack, and in this one they called it... No, it was A Strike for Freedom. So it's very similar. It's very similar.
Yeah.
Except no throne room. Okay. And no laser show.
Because the throne room goes into the end titles, and they wanted to
Right.
save the end titles till the end, so
After
it made more
9.
sense to use. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first section is whatever they had in 2009. And so all of the video clips are only from episodes 1 through 6.
Right.
Even when they're cutting non-chronologically through the films, they never cut to any of the sequels. And then
I guess that's so interesting. I didn't catch that, but that's right. That's interesting.
And then for the sequels, for the first 2 sequels, for the first chunk of music, they cut between all 3 movies with just very minor cuts to 9 to show stormtroopers mostly and
Rey.
villains. And Rey. Yeah. And then after the 8 and 9-ish section, there were like 3 at the end that were just
Scenes.
Almost complete cues played to the
Right.
scene that they cover. I think that they took out some cuts though, like some cross cutting to other action. Like they took out cutting to space battle in the middle of Rey's fight.
Right.
Which I don't know if they edited the music to make that work or what they did. I have not watched those episodes of Star Wars Music Minute yet.
Christina and I just recorded, like they were doing parts where we had just talked about it. I was like, wow.
It was fun.
Yeah.
I gotta say, as someone that's not like the biggest Rise of Skywalker fan, the best way to watch that movie, in my opinion. So if you can figure out how you can do this, next time you watch Rise of Skywalker, what I really strongly recommend is watch it in Walt Disney Hall with one of the best orchestras in the world, playing the score very loudly over just the best parts of the movie. that's I would say that is the best way to watch that movie, in my opinion.
I will say they did include my favorite scene from Rise of Skywalker. Like the scene that I just appreciate the most is the one where Rey is like learning from Luke and trying to convince him to be her teacher, and then he throws his lightsabers. We've got classic Star Wars humor, but then we've also got the kind of Jedi psychology philosophy where Rey like imagines the decay of the earth and the cycle of life and the force between all things, and I thought that was really cool. I feel like we had a nice Rise of Skywalker gives a nice insight into philosophy.
Well, that was from The Last Jedi.
That's one of the reasons it's not so. Yeah.
Well, that's Last Jedi.
That clip was from The Last Jedi. But
it is from The Last Jedi.
But I also really love that part.
I keep thinking it's from The Rise of Skywalker, and
It's
just
okay.
so that it's that's important.
I mean, they also purposely tried to. I think I am so happy that they added the sequel trilogy to this show.
Likewise.
I would love this show to, and Anthony Daniels did an interview on Xanthe Tracks podcast a couple months ago in preparation, like about the return of the show. And in that podcast, it basically is clear that, at least to his knowledge, this is the only one, but he's like, you know, he loves doing this apparently. Like he was asked if he wanted to do it again, and he was like, without hesitation, yes. It's my favorite thing. It was like his favorite thing that he's done. And
bless him.
and he on the podcast is like, Lucasfilm, if you're listening, this is a very tourable show. It's very stripped down from how it was before. It's very tourable. And so I feel like Anthony Daniels would do it if given the opportunity.
And there's multiple, by the way, Lucasfilm, there's multiple musicians on this call that have lots of orchestral experience.
It's true.
Played with, just throwing that out there. Okay?
And then
Some of them got touring experience.
yeah.
That's
And
right.
then Anthony Daniels is also like, he admits that he had a trouble understanding the plot of the sequels, but this show has helped him understand it and like connect with it. and he was
So that ties into a thing that I
wait, let me finish
that
for
I
a second.
remarked. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. And he says that he wants to spread the gospel is what is like almost a direct quote. Is he wants to spread the gospel. And I feel like this reminds me of the thing you told me in the car last night, Ender, about spreading the gospel.
Yeah. So this is something that I wrote down. Is while watching the Sith Psalm horn chorale at the end. Apparently, I wrote down that we are watching the retroactive hagiography of the sequels and of Episode 9 specifically in real time. Like that's what we're doing right now. Is we are taking part in I broke it down like that. The first section with the first 6 films felt like we are retelling a myth. Mm-hmm. And then beyond that point, we're almost like at varying stages of canonizing new stories into the mythology, that we're by retelling them in a different format.
Yep.
And simplifying down, okay, what's the core of the thing? And I thought about how we did this for
the prequels.
In
Retroactively,
fact,
we're like,
in
oh, actually, it
2009
was so good. Yeah.
And in 2009, when they put this together originally, that's what it was doing, right? Is they were canonizing the whole thing as a single thought. And it was interesting to reflect on the fact that what we witnessed is kind of the early stages of I think probably most Star Wars movies have started out not as mortal,
Sure.
as earthly things, but then through constant repetition and remixing and evaluating become the thing that Star Wars is.
Right. And there's going to be okay, so let's take a look 9 years ago, okay? 9 years ago there was I don't know how many human beings that during very formative, impressionable, and psychologically like important moments of their life saw Rey on the screen and just like the only thing that was real to them, like actually real, if you remember how this felt when we were young, I am Rey, and I am gonna be like running around my house dressed as Rey, and I can't wait. Oh my god, I have dreams about if I could go fight across the galaxy with Rey and Finn, and these people are real people in my imagination, right? As a child, we were all unfortunately adults when those movies came out, dealing with real world crap at the time, right? But also trying to put ourselves in that brain wave, watching those movies and enjoying them. But there's real people that are now considerably older now that literally have an unshakable emotional memory that we folks like us kind of didn't have at that level because we just weren't kids, right? But I remember having those moments, and I gave it that description because that's exactly how I felt about Luke Skywalker, right? When I was a kid, like oh my god, this means so much to me. And so when I watch a montage like that, it speaks to my emotional core, because what I'm seeing there is an emotional reflection of how I felt when I watched that movie, right? As a kid. And I think that kind of speaks to kind of getting at what Ender is saying is this is a good representation in many ways of how the people that loved those movies when they first came out 9 years ago, The Force Awakens and with Rey, how they felt, even though we've been, unfortunately, adults experiencing all this annoying online discourse about all of it and all these like adult level critiques on all this. But in reality, there's people that feel that way. Those echoes, those abstract reflections of this myth that they were witnessing 9 years ago when they watched that movie,
Right.
Regarding
and
the
I think-
retroactive hagiography, this is from a review in a 2009 review of Star Wars in Concert on the On Portland blog. I'll put a link in the show notes. And this is a person who clearly grew up with the original trilogy who is saying, blah, 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 the biggest benefactors of this style of presentation are the three prequels. Divorced from some of their baggage, they really shine. I found a real sense of fondness for the core story from the prequels, which was both a surprise and a delight. So we see evidence of people, of this concert maybe helping people connect with the Star Wars that for them isn't part of the core canon emotionally yet.
Yeah, I think that John Williams is really kind of key to that also, because something that I remember growing up, because I grew up, I was young enough to really, really love the prequels.
Yes.
Just unquestionably, I was almost 9 years old when Anakin was 9 years old. So it was like just really perfect. And I remember adults who didn't like the prequels, or older people who didn't like the prequels, not even begrudgingly acknowledging, but John Williams is just amazing still. Like, I still love the score from those movies,
Right. Yeah. And let's be real. Sorry, Ender, I don't want to. You should finish, but I definitely felt very similar when watching that.
Yeah, just like this concert format is just taking John Williams and the shape of the story, just reminding you of the shape of the story, and then having John Williams retell Star Wars, and how much of spreading the gospel that is.
Man, let's just give it okay. I don't want to be too much of a crazy person here, but John Williams in 1999, when that movie came out, was 67 years old. And he had already been a legend. He'd already written some of the best, popular scores of all time. And then listening to Duel of the Fates yesterday, I was just like,
oh
dude,
my gosh, I cried
even,
a little bit.
That's like that score wasn't even made. That wasn't even one of his in his heyday scores. That's like, yo, John, you want to come back and do these prequels that we're making? Like, he could have been like, just give me the cash, I'll whip something out, right? Instead, he wrote that piece is arguably just as iconic as any of the original pieces from the original trilogy in people's minds. Like that piece, you almost forget that that's a prequel because it's so just it's so synonymous with Star Wars,
I think prequels are synonymous with Star Wars too. But
no, I agree, but there's so many people that don't feel that way.
No, you're right.
What I'm
you're
saying.
right.
You know what I mean? Like, I think everybody can it's unquestionable that the original trilogy is what people think of this is the real stuff. Like, everybody agrees that that's unquestionably Star Wars, right? But there's other people that are like, oh yeah, but then they made those prequels. But that piece of music is just so it's a capital S Star Wars. it's if I will, all cap Star Wars, and then connect the S to the T Star Wars.
Shout out to Cal State Fullerton University Singers. I think they did a great job.
They did great. Yeah,
They did.
Yeah, I was disappointed when they didn't come back on stage for the second act.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I was like, oh, we're done already.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. And
I have now it's I need to nitpick about something. I need to nitpick.
let's go.
I don't
Haterade.
I actually don't think it's a nitpick because I think it's a pretty big pick. I need to pick on some of the music selection. I think some of the music selection was awesome and I loved and I think the theming was great or good. And I think some of them, particularly in the sequel trilogy section, I felt there were missed opportunities to showcase other music, and to have more thematically consistent music. And that might be like, I'm a little bit ruined because I have a podcast and I like know, all the leitmotifs that go with different things. And unfortunately, maybe I know too much to enjoy it, to haven't been happy with some of the music choices, but some specific ones I'll mention. Actually, one of them is from also episode 6, or from the end of basically when Vader is dying, that whole thing. I didn't like that it was basically just the Force theme over and over again. Where was that? That was in A Sanctuary.
I believe that
A Life Redeemed.
I think that might have been Anakin leaving home from episode 1.
Oh, interesting. A Life Redeemed. Well, I wanted something. It was okay. It wasn't the most egregious, but I also think having just like some of the cue from Return of the Jedi also would have been really, really cool. Am I just sad that I missed the artificial harmonics because I just really specifically wanted that? Maybe. So maybe this is just too specific of a critique. But particularly with the sequel trilogy, Dark Times Returned was the first one on this program. And they talked about Kylo Ren being like evil, and they showed the clips that they showed were like Kylo Ren being evil. Basically, they showed him, with his red lightsaber, etc. What did they play? They played March of the Resistance.
Right. That was really weird.
Is a little strange.
Yeah, I mean that kind of highlights.
It was a choice.
It was a choice.
You haven't done. Actually, I guess you. I feel like I'm sure we've had this conversation, but we've kind of talked a little bit about how like the Rise of the Resistance, that music is so dark and it's a military march, and it's kind of interesting, and it's in some ways fitting because like the quote unquote the Republic is like the established military order in the galaxy at that point, so it's kind of fits that it has almost like reflections of the Imperial March in some weird ways, or if it has a mood that's similar. It's a dark tune, it's like a dark.
I think it's not dark. I think it's serious more than like
serious.
It veers more towards serious than evil, and I think
it's not sinister.
It's not sinister. It's more serious in the way that like all the military marches in Star Wars are, because of the nature of it's like war. It's like very serious, but it didn't feel like Sith and darkness and like, yeah. Like I was expecting like Kylo Ren's theme or like Anthem of Evil or something, but yeah.
I think that Rise of the Resistance.
March of the Resistance.
Yes, that would be a ride in Disneyland. So I think that's a perfect example of if you're ever teaching a music theory class and anybody says pieces in minor keys are sad and scary sounding, just show them that piece. You know what I mean? It's like, no, that's not what that means. It can vary from that.
What do you think of it, Christina?
I think a lot of the moments y'all are talking about are specifically moments where for whatever reason, I was more excited about the visuals than the orchestra music. And so the notes that I took are more like being excited about the character development that I get to see on screen of like what Anakin's life must have been like, or I have new respect for this character given the light. So there were certain moments where I was really tuned into the music, and there were other moments where I really was just tuned into the story. And I'm noticing that maybe one of the reasons I don't know, like maybe they were so cinematically successful that I was paying attention to the story, or maybe they were so musically unsuccessful that therefore I didn't pay attention to them and chose to pay attention to the story. It's not clear, but
I think there's also a thing that happens when the music is less familiar. It's harder to pay attention to the music, or it kind of can wash over more. And I think for most people, the sequels are less familiar in general.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I'm really disappointed that Jabba Flow wasn't on the
The next one after that was A Journey Begins, and it was Ray's theme, and I thought that was appropriate. That was great. Good. That's what I expected.
That's where I wrote down. Watching the orchestra that there are no boring parts in John Williams music. Like everybody seemed to be doing something really interesting, from the percussion through all the way to the front with the strings. Like everybody had something that seeing it pulled apart like that, you could really see like, wow, it takes a lot to get to that texture.
Yeah.
You know?
And let me tell you, I'm so happy that they, in very loud voiceover, had 1/4 portion.
That was great.
Now, the next one was A Destiny Awakens, which...
And that was
Rose's
The Rise
theme.
of Skywalker? Oh, that was Rose's theme.
No, that was Rose's theme, and then also some like Luke in Exile theme. And that one, I think it's cool to hear Rose's theme in concert, but I don't think they should have used Rose's theme there. It didn't have anything to do with the theme, and it could have been an opportunity to do the Jedi Steps or like something that feels more about Destiny Awakening rather than Rose's theme. I don't know.
Also, this is the one point of Anthony Daniels' script that I took issue with, which is that he said that Rey discovered that she had a connection to the Force that defied all explanation. And
okay.
I don't like that. That's all.
There's a little bit of a familial implication.
Well, and an implication that
because she's from nowhere,
that Luke's or Anakin's connection to the Force did not defy all explanation, since we didn't call it out.
Well, Rey never got a midi-chlorian test, so just how do we know?
Well, neither did Luke.
Okay, fair. So what did you all think of Rose's theme there?
I thought it was a weird choice, but at the same time, like I kind of err on the side of like I'm imagining being in the programming room of being like, what music should we highlight from the sequel trilogy? And I think also, like what selections do we want to like include and kind of put them in the same boat as like all this other music that everyone, it's kind of like giving them a seat at the table, giving those pieces a seat at the table in the hearts of Star Wars fans. So I think it would be unlikely that they would do a Rose featurette. Unfortunately, I should say, it would be nice if they featured her. I mean, there was like hardly any clips of her on the screen at all in any of the clips of the sequels. But I don't know. I feel like I can go both ways. Like, how do you tie it into the main narrative? If you're going to feature that piece of music in the show, how do you tie it to the main narrative? Well, you kind of treat it the same way that they treated the Resistance music, where it's just like, this will work like emotionally, but if anyone knows what this piece of music is, it will not work for them, So I don't know. I could see as an audience member being like, that was great. That was a beautiful, sweet piece of music over those sweet pieces of sweet footage, Yeah. So,
Fair.
By that point in the show, I had made peace with the March of the Resistance one.
Right.
And just said, okay. So I didn't have as big of a problem with Rose. But only because I had given up.
Right.
And I think it was fine. It just because they had such defined like titles that were like, this is what the theme is going to be for this one. If I, once I just relaxed into it and just was like, I'm not worried about what the titles are, it was also fine. But yeah, these are notes, or if they ever feel like they want to revise, which they probably don't, I still would recommend the concert without reservation. But I do just not selfishly, but like I do wish that the Rise of Skywalker or the sequels, that they had a more consistent or cohesive musical presentation. Because also, I think it was a big misstep to not include the Rise of Skywalker theme. And yeah, I missed that. I really did miss that. I think that would have made a really, really nice like ending, or close to ending.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I mean the
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That could have been nice.
What was the next actual piece?
The next one was The Resistance Rises, in which they didn't use March of the Resistance. They did some other thing. I don't know what the actual cue is, but it had a lot of like, it started really upbeat, triplet-y, and then the main theme was doing it in canon. Da-da-da-da-da. I think that one was one of the weaker cues, and I think because March of the Resistance was already used, it kind of weakened that section.
My notes about it were that it reminded me of James Cagney's writing about, which is just like early American patriotic music.
It was very patriotic
like
sounding.
Yeah, it was very patriotic, military band vibes kind of a thing. Like James Cagney wrote like the Grand Old Flag, or you're a grand old flag, you're a high flying flag. You know, good marching songs.
Yeah.
So. Yep.
And then the last three were scenes from the movie. It was A Soul is Healed. That's Rey healing Kylo/Ben after stabbing him. Beautiful scene. A Dyad in the Force. Really glad to hear Anthem of Evil there. And it makes sense, like, if they knew that they were going to use that there, I guess they weren't going to use it for Dark Times Returns. I think it was fine. I think it was really funny to hear the Emperor, to see the Emperor do like Force lightning to Ben Solo, but have the sound effects pulled out. It was actually really strange to watch. Overall, I think it was a good choice to not have too many sound effects, but that one in particular just stood out to me as being hilarious to see.
Right. Well, it was also interesting to see earlier in the presentation the sonic charges from the from Slave One and Boba Fett ship, and not have everything go silent in those moments. You know,
Right.
It was kind of I was like, oh, interesting. Kind of interesting thing to show because that's so linked to its sound effect. You know. Yeah.
There was a sound effect that they kept in common with The Rise of Skywalker, which I suppose I only remember because we just recorded our episode about it, which was just and it's not exactly sound effect, but just the breathing of Rey and Ben Solo and of Palpatine. Like, there's a lot of breathing in that particular component, and there was a lot of breathing in the performance last night. And I thought there was a section where I was like, oh, they're like not really doing much score, and it's just like the main character's breathing.
No,
By breathing, I mean, you know, like
that was just the
getting
guy
attacked
behind
and
you.
breathing. Oh, what a scary thought. But yeah, that checked out.
Yeah.
And then we had Peace and Purpose, which was the final scene from the film, which is Rey back on Tatooine, Rey Skywalker.
Yeah, and aside from the review of the show, Xanthe and I commented, like, seeing that scene again just made me be like, why did they not just put Ben Solo's ghost and Anakin's ghost in that scene? Why did they not just? Why was it just Luke and Leia? It was supposed to be this big Skywalker moment. Nobody would have cared. Like, it would have been a good one for us nerds. You know, it would have been great. Anyway.
I would have liked that, but I also think it was good to Luke and Leia were her mentors.
Yes,
So-
I get within the context of the movie, it makes sense. That doesn't mean that I don't want to see Anakin's ghost there and Ben Solo's. Like, nobody would have questioned it.
Yeah.
I think, you know what I mean? Nobody would have been like, what? She didn't know Anakin. People would have been just like, yeah, Anakin, great, you know?
And I think it would have been good to underscore, like, remind the audience that Ben Solo is a Skywalker, because it's easy to forget because his name.
Right. It would have been so easy to do, and they would have gotten so many
And then
points.
James would have liked the movie.
I would have liked the movie. No, I wouldn't have liked the movie. No, I'm just kidding. I do like the movie, kind of. I have to say, like you said, Ender, I'm liking it more and more. More of these concerts, more of these types of things. Let's do it. I'll probably love it eventually. So.
And then they cut to the end credits, and it was the end credits, not from The Rise of Skywalker, but probably from A New Hope.
Right.
I think it was from A New Hope. I think it had Leia's theme as a C section in there.
Okay. Well, okay. Just one little thing. What do y'all think of like the nice Leia montage?
I liked it. It was some of the concept art was surprising.
This is what I wanted to talk about. There was a couple of inclusions visually that I wouldn't have included. Okay.
Yes. Okay. So to clarify, there's some concept art that they used. There's some production art that they used.
Okay.
There's some book covers that they used, and there's definitely some
smutty fan art.
Additional artwork. I mean, official fan art, essentially.
Yeah. Pretty
that
surprising.
last one.
And I have to say, listen, if y'all make a montage of all your favorite clips of me, okay, underscored by an original piece of music written for me, okay, and I pass away, okay, and you play that in funeral, please try to leave out that one time that I mistakenly made out with my sibling, okay? Just leave that one out of the montage, okay? Please, okay? Okay?
Especially if later in the program... Especially when later in the program, they do call out the fact that they discovered that they were siblings.
Right, right. I'm like, are they going to play that clip again that you showed us that we all kind of went, ugh?
No, we're definitely including that clip, and we're also including all the fan art about that one time that you were doing like a cosplay of a dancer.
Of me in like a Speedo.
Like,
right?
I'm going to start making James Waterman fan art now.
Oh my god. Oh my god. James Waterman scantily clad fan art.
Yeah.
I am all about the scantily clad fan art. I think we need more of that.
I mean, there was like some flexibility going on. I just remember hair and legs.
Some choices going on there. Now the question is was all that present in the 2009 version?
I don't remember. Probably.
I'm going to say yes.
I'm going to say yes too.
So that might explain some things, because 2009, I think there was not as wide of a cultural conversation of being like, that might not be like super the best move to put that in a thing like that, you know? I don't know. Potentially.
Yeah. But then, okay, in the last, like, to wrap this up, let's like talk about the encores and just like any random things that were in your notes that you wanted to mention. There were 2 encores.
Yeah.
Imperial March and the Cantina Band. I will
was
say
fun.
they didn't hit as much, given that we had already heard those in the program.
Right. I wanted them to yank something out of the chest, you know?
Yeah. Christina, you're raising your finger.
I thought they hit a lot because I was really pleased to hear the vastly obvious difference between them playing with a click track and them finally being to be a free orchestra playing and a free conductor conducting. Like that was really satisfying for me. So I really enjoyed that.
What did it stand out in? Which one of those pieces did it stand out the more, or was it both?
I guess it first stood out for the Imperial March, but they did that first. So, but it was just immediately obvious. I was like, oh, I'm gonna immediately look at the screen in front of Maestro Hicks, and I was like, oh, great. Like, it's blank. Like, she's finally not having to play with cues. I can see that her body movements are completely different from how they were during the whole rest of the show. And I thought that was great. I feel like I finally got to see, not finally, I just feel like I got to see the other side of the orchestral personality that was presented in the show.
Yeah. And we could
And
also
it
talk
was
about the
almost like, I
conductor.
guess it made it clear, like, oh, they were playing like a studio orchestra this whole time. And then now they're playing like a live concert orchestra.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, because sometimes it felt reserved and a little bit like, I don't know, like focused in a different way, like in a need to just be
Totally.
right.
I feel like in the Cantina song, I also got to really enjoy like the player solos, or just like the particular parts of like I especially noticed the bass player doing some cool, it's like the double bass player doing some cool stuff. I noticed percussionists doing some cooler stuff. Because they probably were more able to be free and not, the priority was different. The priority wasn't staying on track. The priority was just letting loose, having fun.
Yeah, it's just on a performance level. I do find that, I mean, these folks are pros and all that stuff as a disclaimer, but we all know when you've got a click track on, you're expected to like really like drive a bus, especially as a percussionist. I'll say this for myself: when I'm playing drum set, like when I'm expected to drive the bus in a band and we're all on a click, like I might be a little less maybe less adventurous in many ways, like with my volume, with my just the way I'm playing, my feel when I'm expected to make sure that first and foremost we don't fall off that click, because if we do, it's a disaster, right? Yep. So yeah, you might have heard like some more loosey-goosey, more bravado in some of those percussion hits. Especially the drum set player. I bet the drum set player on the Cantina band was definitely able to stretch his limbs a little bit more on the second time around, because he's literally not just being like, dude, if I get us off this clip, we are screwed. So yeah, that's a real thing.
From a programming perspective, I thought that maybe they should have, if they're going to do 2 songs that we already heard, just sans click. First off, I don't know if everyone in the audience would have been able to tell the difference between would a layperson know that the first one was to a click and the second one was not to a click? I don't know. But then I think it was weird to do the last encore with not the full orchestra. So I would maybe have swapped the order that they did those in.
Cantina and then
to do the March? Cantina first and then Imperial March. If you really must do those 2 for the...
Well, they didn't know that we were going to call for another piece,
Yeah, they didn't prepare.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I hear you. I kind of just wanted to hear other Star Wars music. Like, come on, give us the theme from the band batch,
The Bad Batch?
Band batch. Give me Andor, Come on. That would be awesome if they like cranked out the Mandalorian or something, though. Like that would be
actually
funny.
I thought there was a chance that they might play the Mandalorian theme. Like I thought that would have been.
They'd like bring out the synthesizer. Yeah,
I think.
Or the Boba Fett.
Or just the giant recorder. A guy.
Bring the choir back out to do the end credits version of the Boba Fett theme.
Boba Fett. That would be awesome.
I think.
Do you think that there are choirs performing the Boba Fett theme?
No.
I don't actually. Regarding
Sadly,
the click,
no.
I think going back to the conversation about film music being in the concert hall, I think the clickiness of having to play to picture sometimes. And James, I don't recall when we saw the From Mexico to Hollywood whether they had in-ears in. Maybe we were too far to see. Do you think they were playing to click that night too? I feel like they weren't.
I think Gustavo was.
Oh, Gustavo, perhaps.
Oh, you
the
mean that
individual
did the
players.
musicians have clicks?
Yeah.
Like in ears? I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
And I can tell you for a fact, like the mariachi band did not have.
Oh,
any
true.
music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I also am a fan of film music in the concert hall, but I think a lot more reservations about how it's done than maybe James does.
Yeah,
I'm not
just
like,
such a logic boy. I like clicky music sometimes,
I think
So
like
you and I probably have
musicians-
different opinions on clicky music,
Well, no, I like clicky music and I like playing to click when it's appropriate, but for something that is more meant to be an orchestral showpiece, playing with click is a very different level of engagement that as a violinist I have. And so I can detect that in the orchestra, and I like when the orchestra feels like free and having fun. To be honest, I notice it even when an orchestra is playing a new piece of music, like a contemporary piece that they haven't played before. And then it's like the second half of the program is like some symphony or some piece that they're really used to and they're really comfortable with, is like when they're playing the contemporary piece, even if it's like very accurate and stuff, I do notice they often feel like less free and feel a little bit more like, and I know when I'm playing in an orchestra, like I just played a concert where the first half had a new piece on it and I was just like so dialed in, like, okay, the rhythms are changing. I just need to make sure that I just need to make sure I don't come in at the wrong place. And then for the Gershwin concerto, I feel like much more free.
Even more reason why they should take it on tour, right?
Yeah.
Right? Because by even you some of those little nervousness will become once you're playing with that click every night, you'll be able to be more free over it.
Well, I don't think they're feeling nervous with the click for Star Wars in concert. I think just feeling nervous about playing a new piece of music, feeling more focused on just getting it right, has the same stilting effect as playing with the click.
That's what I mean, though. But I think that I don't know if maybe nervous isn't the right word. It's just that you're more constricted. Right? Like that's what it comes down to. It's like you have one goal first and foremost, which is to make sure you don't fall off that cliff. And everything after that is secondary, as opposed to when you're playing something really, really comfortable, you just already know you're going to play it pretty consistently with the tempo because you've played it so many times. Yeah. And you're gonna be more expressive with it.
Yeah. And if your eyes glaze over and you lose where you are on the page, you know where the next place you come in, and so you're not like, oh crap, I stopped counting and I don't know where I am.
It's kind of how I feel. I just did that show this at noon to midnight this past weekend and had to use electronics, and even though my part was relatively simple, just the fact that there's like this component that like if this thing loses power, the piece is ruined. Like there's very little things when I'm playing a vibraphone just by itself or a snare drum where that could happen, where it's just like one little thing could just ruin the whole like the vibraphone just like blips out of existence. Like that will not happen, right? But with electronics, that is a possibility. Like all of a sudden one little thing could just cause this instrument to essentially be not usable, and that is that's terrifying in some ways. So yeah. Oh my God, the percussion in this show was awesome.
Oh, yeah?
It was great. All the percussionists were all great. Steel drummers, drum set players, classical percussionists just doing the job. I was kind of impressed. Is there, by the way, do you happen to know, is there something with the LA Phil where they have to use paper sheet music? Do they have to? Is that just part of like one of their stipulations that everybody on stage is not allowed to use an iPad?
I wonder if there's something to, first of all, it looking more consistent if everyone is using paper, it just being a more consistent way of doing it.
That's
especially if you're going to have backlit screens. Yeah, especially if you're going to have everyone with backlit screens or something. And then also I wonder if there's something like they don't want to send, I guess, would they provide iPads or would they have musicians themselves have to provide them for them and their stand partner? That's another question.
The reason is because I know this percussionist doing a lot of like grabbing scores and bringing it from stand to stand, which can be avoided if you've got like if you've either got an iPad or if you've got like multiple copies or things like that, which I found just kind of interesting because I'm like, oh, okay, interesting.
That is interesting. It's not really a concern with the violin section, but yeah, with the percussion.
Yeah, we have to do that all the time, or we make multiple copies, or all these kinds of things. It was just kind of like a little inside baseball thing that
I wonder if they like were legally not supposed to distribute it electronically.
Oh,
That's what I
good
would
point.
think.
Right.
Yeah.
Good point. That's really interesting.
Yeah. The most secure is a hard piece of paper.
Yeah. The thing is, they probably also did send it out electronically before so that people could practice, but it would have been in a very not for concert use.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Percussively, there were some moments where there was like xylophones in unison. Two xylophonists playing xylophones in unison. Marimba parts that were so much more prominent during major moments, which is the one prominent part that I noticed. It was it in Jedi Steps? Where was it? I should have written it down. But there was just some parts where I was like, oh, I don't know if I've ever heard that part before. Really fun. Really nice to actually see a real
Almglocken?
There was I believe some Almglocken in
A sanctuary
in Ewoks.
Yeah.
And
tell me what that instrument is.
So it's Almglocken are essentially just large cowbells. And they're like large. What are they? Large brass. Basically cowbells that sound. Oftentimes they're tuned. Steel, I guess they're steel. And there was like a whole rack of them that the percussionist was playing, and they kind of have this like kind of dark timbre to them. So,
and then you also pointed out the djembe on Duel of the Fates. I was like,
what reminding me all these things that I was noticing.
Because
somebody had a racked djembe in the back.
Yeah, that was Dave Gerhardt playing, who I just met last week.
Oh, cool.
I noticed for the first time how much xylophone ostinato there is in Battle of the Heroes. That was a thing that because of the way that it's mixed on the album and in the movie, I hadn't noticed that before, but that's
right. Is that fun?
Also that some of the songs had like I think the opening theme has a very involved timpani part.
Oh yeah.
But then Battle of the Heroes is like same note, quarter notes for just a really long time.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times that stuff is like kind of cued into whatever either like the basses or brass are playing. I was very jealous of the snare drummer. I just love.
Yeah, I asked James if you could play in this concert, which percussion would you choose? And he said, without hesitation, snare.
Yeah, easily. All those snare drum
Why?
parts are. Well, they're just fun. They're just fun, and they're so prominent, and they're like, especially in the main title with the 4-stroke roughs. Yeah, it's the best. It's the best. Especially Imperial March as well. Come on.
I was noticing in the Imperial March.
That's Star Wars nerds bolero.
So true. Oh my god. Oh, it really is. Imperial March, I was noticing just like how, because the violins are buried throughout most of it, but they're still doing that consistent and that is like a tongue twister on the bow direction, and they just have to do so much of it. And then there'd be like,
they were great.
And then there'd be like a 4-bar section where they're just going like just being able to see the violins, just like I'm always reminded every time I see people play John Williams music live, I'm just like, that is a gnarly violin part that John Williams just throws in this like very technically demanding line. It's like when you're practicing a piece of music and you're like, this looks easy. Okay, this will probably take me a little bit of practice. And then it's like, oh, the last bar is like this thing that I'm gonna have to practice for 2 hours. Great. Like there were so many moments like that throughout the concert where I was just like feeling like, oh man, if I got hit with this piece tomorrow, I would, just because of this like 4-bar section, that would double my practice time, triple my practice time.
Right. It's pretty awesome. And they were tight, especially in your Imperial March. It's so nice to hear like an orchestra just go dot dot digga 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 digga, like really, really in the pocket. I mean, click track helps with that too. But Yeah, next time somebody asks me to play the snare drum part to Bolero, I'm just going to play the Imperial March instead.
Man, it was so nice to hear all of this in Disney Hall, like compared to the Hollywood Bowl. I can't even describe. Disney Hall was so nice.
Yeah.
Christina,
and I have one piece of feedback that I have for Disney Hall.
Okay.
And it's entitled, What's a Wookiee got to do to get a drink around here for under $20? Okay. Walt Disney Hall, we need to work on those concession prices, my friends. Okay.
But then too many people would get them. And
That's
the line
true.
would be too long.
Unreal, though. Unreal. I guess this is as Jerry Seinfeld has a bit about airport prices. He's like, have we stepped into some universe where like tuna is rare here? Is like what? Like, is all alcohol rare in Walt Disney Hall? Like, it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild.
What I think is wild is that you have to finish your drink before going back in the hall. Which in an intermission, you're going to, like if you're spending half of that time in line and then you get your drink, you have like 5.
You're like,
you have to like down your drink.
Give us $25 for that glass of wine and also chug it before you get to your seat. Yeah.
Christina, last night you were mentioning that you really liked the Conductor. I feel like we should touch upon the Conductor more specifically, other than she had an outfit change halfway through the show, which was fun.
She did have an outfit change halfway through the show.
Yep. Came back with sparkle pants.
Yep.
Yeah. Those are awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Although I think I also really liked the matte black pants. But yeah, I liked her. I thought that she
She was awesome.
had a very successful hold on the orchestra, and I appreciated her. Yeah, I feel like she was very successful as a conductor. And I saw in her bio that she does a lot of movie collaboration kind of things, and so it seemed like for her this was very standard in a way, like this is her wheelhouse. And probably watching the Conductor was one of the top reasons that I enjoyed the Encores so much, was because her demeanor and personality just completely changed, and I thought that was really noticeable. So
she killed it. She killed it. Sarah Hicks killed it.
Yeah, from her very first like conducting the conducting the the Star Wars main crawl theme, the main theme. She started very strongly, and I think it set the tone for the night. Like just that first opening note. Oh, I got so excited.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Bravo to everybody in the group.
Definitely.
Really amazing.
And again to Anthony Daniels.
We got a heck of a band here in LA, if I should,
Yep.
It's pretty, you take it for granted living out here, but it's pretty awesome to have like one of the best orchestras in the world. Just like downtown. Pretty cool. So.
And then also the director of the Singers was Robert Istad.
Got it.
So shout out.
Yeah, they sounded great.
Yeah, I think it was an interesting choice to use them. I would have assumed like the Master Chorale, the LA Master Chorale or something, but Cal State University, Fullerton University Singers. I wonder how that partnership happened.
Yeah, it's nice to see, I guess, a non-monopoly.
Yeah.
It's nice to see some change. Not that, of course, I think the Master Chorale is housed at Disney Hall, is it not? So, of course.
Yeah.
And now every single one of those singers at that school gets to say that they performed in the LA Phil. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
Pretty big deal.
Oh, and then the concertmaster for the night was Bing Wang. Actually, I don't know if she pronounces it Bing Wang, but she is John Williams's favorite concertmaster. She concertmasters the bowl concerts, and technically she's the third. So there's 4 concertmasters. Oh yeah, James, you were asking me about that yesterday. So there are 4 concertmasters in the LA Phil. There's principal concertmaster, first associate concertmaster, and assistant concertmaster. And out of those 4, only one of them was there. So like that's why they have 4, because if a few of them can't make it, so that there's always going to be someone who is meant to be a concertmaster, not just a section violinist having to play the role of concertmaster. So she did have at least one really pretty solo. On Leia's theme, at the end of Leia's theme.
That was beautiful.
Yeah. And then Nathan Cole, who is the first associate concertmaster, and his wife, Akiko Tarumoto, who is the number 4 concertmaster. They're married. I believe they're moving to Boston. Nathan Cole won a position as concertmaster of Boston Symphony. And then also, like in the same short span of time, Martin Chalifour, who's been the principal concertmaster for decades, announced his retirement. So suddenly the LA Phil has to fill 3 concertmaster spots. So that will be interesting.
I also think the horns.
I better start practicing.
What'd you say about horns?
I just think the horns did a lovely job. There were, Star Wars has tons of horns music.
Yeah. And the violas did a lovely job. I was able to like more clearly see when some of the string parts were solely viola. So, yeah, very good moments.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we would all recommend this concert if people have the opportunity to attend.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can make it.
Hope it tours. You could go to concert halls. Anthony Daniels would love to. And yeah, I guess that's our episode. Does anyone have anything else to add?
Star Wars is great, and then this concert just made me want to go watch some Star Wars.
Star Wars is great,
which was what I think it's a good display of incidental music like this, or score music should do. It should make you. It should reignite your love for the medium that it's from, right? Which, success.
Yeah, I think it. Yeah, I could always watch more Star Wars. Well, anyway,
I want to be clear that my shirt is Thrawn's Battleship Chimera.
I'm so glad we got a Thrawn mention in this.
Thank you. We did it.
Thank you. Thank you,
dude. Oh my God. Xanthe, how for the encore? How much would you laugh if all of a sudden the organ in the back of Disney Hall starts playing?
No,
and then the Thrawn theme from Rebels.
If it were in Disney Hall,
people in the audience would be like, "Wait, what? I thought this was a Star Wars."
It's like, didn't you watch Star Wars Rebels? Oh man, I've never seen that organ. No, I have seen it played.
How awesome would that be?
That would be surprising.
The Kiners live in concert. That would be cool.
I'm sure it'll happen at some point.
I wish it would. I mean, honestly.
Yeah, let's get a Kiner spotlight or a John Williams spotlight on the Kiners.
That would be fun.
Or a Star Wars spotlight that has all the various composers.
That would be so cool.
John Powell, Giacchino.
They can if they tour it, they can bring Cameron Carpenter and bring his touring organ. So they can do the Thrawn theme for the encore.
But if they're doing if they're touring concert halls that have if they're touring concert halls that have organ, that could be a stipulation, like must have an organ.
Well, that's why Cameron Carpenter made the international or the first touring organ. You ever seen that video?
No.
It's crazy. He made one that you can bring from place to place. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Well, I want to see the French fry organ do it. Anyway.
French fry organ.
That's what they call it.
It's apt. No, it's apt. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a stunning organ.
And so if you're watching the show the first time and you want Xanthe to create merch, please leave a comment so that they will get on that ASAP. And if you're interested in a T-shirt like this, let them know right away because they are definitely going to be making merch soon.
I definitely need to, and I felt bad yesterday that we didn't have like merch to wear or something. I was like, it would have been cool to have like a Star Wars Music Minute something. Yep. James thinks that we should. James thinks he turned to me. He's like, you need to do opera glasses.
Opera glasses. So when all of our fans go to concerts, they will be able to represent their favorite podcast.
Yeah. So if anyone
any other ideas that you might have for merch, specifically music related merch, whether it be tuning our pitch pipes, with Star Wars Music Minute written on it, earplugs, these types of things, please let us know some suggestions in the comments of merch that you want Xanthe to definitely make.
Please do. I think it would be cool to have like sticky notepads that are with staff paper or something.
That's cool.
But
That's
anyway,
very cool.
I'm sure it's expensive to make.
Cute.
Well, anyway, can everyone tell the audience where to find you and your work? James, we'll start with you.
Sure. You can go to jameswatermanmusic.com or find me at jameswatermanmusic on Instagram.
And James is a
and
percussionist
Spotify.
and composer.
James Waterman on Spotify as well.
Christina.
I'm not extremely findable, but you can find me on Instagram at xtverse.studio.
Cool. And for everyone, you can also find episodes of them all over my podcast, all over Star Wars Music Minute, and on YouTube only. We've also reviewed a lot of shows. And what about you, Ender?
At Aurek Fonts on most things. And there'll be a link saying how to spell that in the description, I assume.
It's like Arabesh, but Arc Fonts. And also by Ender's Fonts. It's lots of Star Wars fonts. Including one that's in the works that's Max Rebo inspired.
That's true.
Yeah, it's very blobby. And you can find Star Wars Music Minute on many social media platforms. And also I'm Xanthe Tan on many places, including on Blue Sky, which I've just started using more consistently. Every single one of these people has a Star Wars Music Minute episode coming out very soon. I think you all have back-to-back episodes. Christina, you're on episode 23. James, you're on episode 24 with Justin Scheid. Ender, you're episode 25. So it's going to be a very you all heavy month. And with that, thank you so much for listening to this episode. May the Force be with you. See you soon on Star Wars Music Minute.